All right, guys, what's going on? Needs more drums. Back in our city of Percusion in our region of Los Baterias. And today we're back in the downtown. Gonna try to do some work as much as we can. I want to put a pedestrian area. I originally thought about putting it here, but I think instead I'm gonna put it over here where this industrial area currently is, just because I'd like to save this for some of the nicer skyscrapers and stuff, to kind of like hide this train station from the coast, and so we have a nice skyline right in the front of the city. So I might save that for over there. And you know what? I actually kind of want to do. I'm thinking about doing that today. Actually, just starting to build this pedestrian area, because some of these areas here are just not developed enough to really kind of make the downtown. The buildings aren't at a very high level. Part of it is that there's not a lot of land value. So maybe we can kind of play around here in the downtown and see if some skyscrapers work. But for now, let's just focus on transforming this into a nice pedestrian area and getting rid of this power plant and industry. All right, so jumping right into the build, we're just going to do a time lapse today because I actually recorded this before the new Financial District DLC came out. So I figured, it'd be nice to have one more episode in Percusion before the inevitable happens, and some the mods need updating and stuff, and it might be difficult to open the save game, even though we're not using like a ton of mods, but things like building themes or something like that might break. But yeah, so I got to still check on that now, and I've been playing some other games and stuff in the meantime, so figured I'd get this recording done and finished before then. But you are seeing this after the DLC already came out. But anyway, okay, so yeah, first of all, this pedestrian area DLC is honestly kind of a little bit of a hidden gem in my opinion. If you don't have it and you don't have a lot of the DLCs for City Skylines, this is definitely one that I would recommend picking up. It adds a lot of cool functionality to the game. I think the whole aspect of the pedestrian area, it has a lot of benefits. It sort of acts like a nice, it's a nice district, a nice way to break up your city. The buildings, the wall-to-wall district specialization is really cool. It has some really cool modern-looking buildings. The parks that come with this, like the little plazas and such, are really nice. And also it has some buildings outside of just the pedestrian area buildings that you can place in your city. Like we're actually going to put down a couple in this episode, but you saw in the last episode there was a train station that I considered putting down as our central station, which was a little bit too small for that, but I'd like to place it somewhere else in the city. But yeah, some really just cool modern high capacity buildings that you don't even need to put in a pedestrian area, so you can just put them around your city wherever you like. And I love when the DLCs, I feel like lately they've been adding a lot more content than in the past, and just they kind of I feel like the developers with this game, I like them. I feel like they kind of listen they've been delivering some DLCs that bring something to the game that people want, like the skyscraper content creator pack. That's an awesome one. The airports one was fantastic. Industries is still one of my favorites, so this one is no exception. There's just a lot of really cool stuff, and not to mention the free content update that came with this, that offered the new roads and the new buses and trams. And so all that is part of this DLC, and the trams, I think, and everything, you can get that for free. So yeah, I mean, I would highly recommend picking this up if you haven't already. But anyway, on to the build. So this area, I was struggling for a long time to figure out what to do with it. And I didn't, it was kind of one of those temporary areas that I put together right when we started the city. If you remember, this was kind of like our industrial area, and then across the river I had our residential and commercial. And so now that we are expanding the city and have some other places to put the industry, kind of by the port area and everything, I'd like to sort of try to move this out of here as much as possible and save this area for some residential and commercial, and maybe like another type of something to kind of, I always like to break up, like where this big grass spot is right now that my cursor's at. I always like to leave a spot to put something that breaks up the industrial areas from the residential and commercial areas. So usually for me, that's like a stadium, or maybe like a museum, or sometimes even like a park is a cool way to just anything like that. Maybe a zoo, anything like that is a cool way to break up those areas, so the pollution isn't getting right into the residential. And another way to do that too is even with like warehouses and stuff. You know, I mean, granted, they're noisy and there's going to be a lot of truck traffic, but it's still better than having those like polluting industry buildings right next to your houses. And so just doing a little bit of reconstruction here with the roads and, you know, figuring out where I want these roads to go. There, I end up changing a lot of this down by the waterfront to those buildings there, but we'll get to that in a little bit. But yeah, I think this industry might stay where it's at, just because it's kind of a little more established, and you know, I put some detail in with surface painter and everything, and I kind of like where that sits. I like having a little industrial area that's, you know, right, it kind of shows where the outskirts of the city used to be, and so I think keeping that there is going to be kind of cool, and you know, kind of working around that in the future. I don't like to move massive areas of the city because that's not really what happens. Usually, you know, either those buildings are repurposed or the area is repurposed, but a lot of times, you know, those areas will generally stay the same. The city will just kind of expand around it. But yeah, so here we have some of the pedestrian roads that are really, really nice. I like the variation that you can have, either, you know, the bluestone or the cobblestone or the sandstone, I believe. I decided to opt for I think the bluestone here, just because it's, you know, got a nice little modern look. And yeah, it just fits in well with the roads that we currently have, you know, in the city. And the sandstone, I always feel, is a little bit too light. I kind of like these darker stone ones better. But yeah, just putting some of these down. Got some, you know, good tree-lined roads here, and I'm definitely probably going to upgrade these a little bit later. You know, maybe make certain ones with the trees, and make certain ones with like some grass medians. But I'll do that kind of once I put everything down. And I actually didn't notice that the terrain here was a little bit more hilly than I would have liked. I think that it makes it a little bit, you know, more difficult to build, especially when you're building like these wall-to-wall buildings that come with this pedestrian, the pedestrian pack. When those develop, I'm curious to how those are going to look on a little bit more of a hilly terrain, but I don't really think it's going to be that bad. It could be worse. We're not building on like a mountainside or anything. But anyway, yeah, as you can see, the one building that I did put down already is a cargo and garbage service point, just that small service point for the whole area. I think that you know, you need that to even start the pedestrian area, similar to how you need an industry building, the headquarters building, or like, you know, the university areas, you need the admin building. So yeah, just to make the district, you need to put that down. But yeah, you know, I've actually built a pedestrian area in another one of my cities, and I've never really needed to upgrade from this, given no matter how big the pedestrians area was. But yeah, cool stuff. Anyway, just, you know, facing some issues with power here, as always when you move stuff around. You know, using my favorite asset here, this little electrical box, just makes these issues totally irrelevant. And then it can go back to zoning. And so what I wanted to do is kind of keep that commercial district there, and, you know, kind of zone some offices out, because I'm envisioning maybe putting down some higher education pretty soon. And well, spoiler alert, I actually do a little bit of that in this episode. But yeah, just something different, you know, so that people don't always have to work in industry. They could work, you know, in a higher education place like office or something like that. So putting down these zones, you know, keeping this kind of given a more dense urban look to this area. I think this will be a nice way to sort of transition from the downtown to the sort of the more lower density suburbs and outskirts of the city. And this pack is a great way to do that, just because of the heights of the buildings. The wall-to-wall buildings they don't get very tall like high rises. And then I noticed that because I was using building themes mod in this district, I had kind of messed up, you know, and so I had it set to just grow certain buildings, when in reality I should turn off building themes mod for the pedestrian area district. And I was kind of, you know, going back and forth about what exactly the issue was. And then I was like, wait, maybe I could just actually make a wall-to-wall theme. But then I was like, nah, why don't I just go ahead and just make it its own district? So I ended up expanding the downtown district to go across the river there. And then this, you know, industry kind of becomes its own thing, and the pedestrian area kind of becomes its own thing. So now these buildings will grow like I intend them to. And so the reason that I put that bus lane between there is that I think that would be a great way to still avoid traffic but still give people some access to public transport, as this pedestrian area is pretty big. It's, you know, it's a few blocks long, so they still need some access to some public transit without having to walk, you know, kind of end to end. So I think that'd be a great way to do that, is just, you know, put that road right down the middle. It's kind of a nice, aesthetically speaking too, it's kind of a nice centerpiece for the you know, kind of like a main strip for the area. And, you know, just experimenting, kind of putting down some of these parks. I really like these really cool modern little plazas, you know, these food trucks and these little ice cream stands and that cool little plaza with the statue. I just love the modern look that they went with for developing some of these buildings for the pedestrian area. I think they look fantastic, especially that big glass structure that you could put right at the entrance. Like, oh man, that thing is just, it just kind of catches your eye. Like in the city, it's a nice kind of draw, and just really, again, just transitions, a nice transition from the downtown. I'm kind of picturing, you know, some high rises, and then you see this cool structure, and then just some lower density, well, not necessarily lower density, but just smaller buildings before we kind of get out to the suburbs. So yeah, I'm really liking how this area's, you know, how the layout's going so far. You know, obviously it's not going to grow all the way just in this episode, because there's a lot of you know, our demand isn't very high for residential or even commercials, you know, right at about 50, a little less than 50%, which is kind of where I like to keep it. I don't think you ever want to bring your, I've been reading up, you know, a little bit on, or things I've read in the past about city skylines, is that you kind of want to keep your commercial zones at about 50%, because if you let them get too low, then you can run into maybe things like having not enough workers. I think that's a big thing that's always kind of plagued my cities, is that I'll zone out some areas and a bunch of businesses will open up, or offices, and then I get the, you know, not enough workers or not enough educated workers, and then I'm kind of playing catch up, you know, with my residential, even if there's sometimes not a residential demand. So yeah, just being mindful of that, and kind of understanding that your city isn't just going to grow when you want it to. You kind of have to let the city grow organically in the way that it wants to grow. Sort of has like a life of its own, so to speak. But yeah, here I didn't really like, I know it was kind of temporary before, but I just never really liked the way these buildings were laid out in this part of the downtown, or part of the city. So what I decided to do is actually think of a use for this area. You know, I was like, what can I do with this kind of small space that I have to sort of make it something a little different, and not just kind of zone out some more residential or more commercial or whatever. And I was actually thinking it might be a good spot for a hospital, because we don't have a hospital yet in, well, anywhere really. We only have, you know, a clinic. So just finishing out some of these empty spots here, but still thinking about kind of just what I want that to be. And yeah, we actually do end up making that a hospital. Spoiler alert. But always funny recording this commentary after I record the footage, because I always know what I'm gonna do. But kind of you know, seeing into the future, so to speak. But yeah, I was like, man, that would just fit perfectly there. And I know, you know, there are some ones that I've used in the past, like this university one I like. But that high capacity one really kind of caught my attention, mainly because it takes up a small footprint, and it still looks like really urban and modern. So it would really fit in well if we, like I keep talking about, this transition out of the downtown. And so I think this is a perfect building to have that, because, you know, it still gives that urban look, kind of, you know, fits in well with the higher density buildings, but it's not it doesn't take up a large footprint, so we could still kind of make a little bit of a park around it. And I love to do this in all of my cities, all of my builds. Whenever I put down something like this, you know, it's so much nicer than just plopping it into a little tiny spot in the grid. You know, it's nice to kind of make it its own thing, because oftentimes, like areas like this, you know, hospitals especially, or anything like a community college or library, you know, things like that are kind of meant to be, you know, better city services. Typically those things will be surrounded by, you know, some kind of park or some kind of little plaza just something that breaks up the monotony of the grid and you know, the high density buildings. So this is just nice, so that, you know, you figure patients can, you know, go out for a walk, or say that, you know, you're visiting somebody in the hospital, you can go out for a walk or something, or enjoy, you know, some lunch outside, and kind of, you know, get some fresh air and not be surrounded by, you know, feel all closed in by the high-rise buildings that are sitting around you. But yeah, so that's why, you know, just kind of spending some time detailing this up with some trees and bushes just makes all of the difference. And so that's done. And well, before I kind of continue building here, fun fact of the day, the past week I went to a concert downtown in Chicago. The 1975 was there. I know I talked about, you know, listening to their new album and in one of my earlier videos in the series. But yeah, if you like the 1975, I was at their show. Very, very fun band to see live. They played at this place called the Aragon Ballroom, which is just like a you know, smaller, I wouldn't say small size, but like a medium-sized indoor venue. So it was a little bit echoey, and it's all standing room only. But yeah, tickets were, you know, decent price, and so we were pretty close. You know, we were in a good spot. We were right in the middle by the sound guys. So they that's always a good spot to be, because you don't, if you're too far to the side, you only hear kind of one side of the mix. Whereas if you're in the middle there, you kind of get a nice balance of the whole mix, and it wasn't too loud in there either, which was really nice. But yeah, it was tons of fun. Would highly recommend going to concerts. If you don't, why don't you? They're super fun, and I know they're a little more expensive now, but nonetheless, had a great time, and would highly recommend seeing that band again, especially if you like them. You know, go check them out. They were super groovy, super fun. They played some of their older stuff too, which was kind of nice. But yeah, all around good stuff. So back to the build, trying to figure out what I wanted to put. I knew that I wanted to put down a community college, because I call it a community college, but it's really not. But I wanted to put down something like that because our city needed some higher education. And sometimes I feel like the universities are just such kind of like a big project. I just, you know, I'll do one later, I'll put one down later and build it and whatever, but I don't really know exactly where I want it to go yet. So for now, I thought that just putting down this, again, pedestrian DLC, or plazas and promenades DLC building, is so cool. This is modern, it's a high capacity university, but you know, I like to think of it as like maybe like an art school, or like some kind of, you know, community college, or like a tech school, you know, something that's a little more just people who want to live downtown and kind of get, you know, pursue higher education without going to a whole university. I think that, you know, there are a lot of buildings like this in Chicago and everything, kind of like little schools that you can go to that aren't just these huge campuses. So, you know, something that will start getting our citizens educated without having to spend a ton of money building out a whole university complex. And again, just same with the hospital, adding in a little bit of detail, you know, a little bit of trees, a little bit of pathways, nothing too crazy. It's only took me, you know, like 10 minutes to build, but just like, I think it turns out really nice, and I love where it sits right on the water. These people at this university are definitely going to have a beautiful view. So we're just wrapping up the build here, and before I get done, just enjoy the rest of this detail, and I will talk to you guys in a second. All right, guys, and there we have it. Got a little university built, so hopefully our city will start getting some educated citizens. And actually, I really like where that's at right now. At first, I thought it was going to be temporary, but you know what? It might stay there. I think that is a great, you know, nice, cool little building to kind of, once this becomes very, very dense, this will break up the high density and, you know, give way to some of the lower density waterfront properties that are probably going to be here. So that's a great location for that. And I mean, that is just a cool looking building. You know, they really did well with these pedestrian buildings. I mean, a lot of these look cool, and this hospital too. I love that. And that's perfect right here. We have an essential service, to that covers this whole part of the city, so that's great. And then as this pedestrian area builds up, we'll go in and change up some of these trees and upgrade it and detail it. But for now, I'm just kind of letting it grow. So we'll revisit that in a later episode. But for now, I think this is coming along nicely. And then in the near future, plans are to detail up this train station, fill in this area here and this area with some higher density buildings. And then I think we'll revisit that a little bit, though, once the city kind of levels up. So I think what we need to do is add in some additional public transport that'll help these cities level up, and this higher education as well will help these buildings level up, and hopefully we can increase some land value. And also the big thing too, this park is going to be a huge draw. So I think next, park, fill in these areas, get some public transit, and then we can start really working on the downtown and getting a nice skyline together and maybe placing down some unique buildings. So until then, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next episode. Peace.